Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Good evening from wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Imani Johnson. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
And I'm Bianca McCall.
And we will both be your co hosts for this evening's panel. So, just to give you a little bit of insight about this panel, it's called the Women's Health and Wellness Panel, and it is hosted by the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. And honestly, we just want to have an open and honest conversation centered around women's health, wellness, and everything in between. And we honestly just want to have a well rounded approach to address how we as women could take better care of ourselves. So we have some amazing guests that are here this evening for you all. They are here as panelists, as our guests, who are here to answer questions, who are here to share information. They all come from very beautiful, unique backgrounds. So it's going to be very exciting to get to hear, their stories, the tips, and what they have to share professionally and personally. All righty, you ready, Bianca?
I'm so excited. Let's bring them in.
Yes. So first, I'll introduce our first panelist. She's actually a soror of the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. Her name is Alana Askew. She has her BSN and RN, and she is a psychiatric registered nurse and a forensic nurse examiner. Welcome, Alana.
Anna.
Hi, hi.
We're glad to have you here this evening.
No, I'm glad to be here. This is a very important topic and discussion, and I'm just, grateful to be able to be part of the discussion.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you for taking your time to be here.
For
Our
sure.
second panelist, Bonita Smith, who is a therapist and owner of Insight Behavioral Services. She is a therapist who has her LPCS. Welcome, Bonita.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Bonita.
Good evening. And
Hi.
just for a second, I think I mispronounced it. Can you pronounce what license that you have?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional counselor, LCPC in Maryland, and I'm also a supervisor.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, Bonita.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And our last but not least, our third panelist, her name is Jewel Raquel. She is a consultant for Bedroom Candy Incorporated. Welcome, Jewel.
Hi.
Hey, Jewel.
Whoa.
So happy to be up here. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate all three of you ladies for joining us this evening. And just to give a little insight, this is hosted by the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. So for anyone tuning in, just know that throughout this panel, feel free to drop questions in the chat. If you all have any personal questions or things that you would like to talk about, feel free to drop it in the chat. These panelists are here. They're more than ready and welcome, to answer your questions and share what they have. All right, Bianca, I'm passing it to you.
All right. Again, thank you so much, ladies, for being here. In the same order that you guys came into the chat, just tell me a little bit more about your job title, your profession, and explain what inspired you to go into your career path.
Right. So, my profession, as Imani mentioned, is a registered nurse, specifically in psychiatric nursing. And I also work part time as a forensic nurse examiner. I think for me, getting into nursing, period, I was inspired by my mother, who is also a registered nurse and a psychiatric registered nurse. And, in the Black community, well, I think it's limited to the Black community, but it may also be like that outside of the Black community. But when your parents have friends that become your aunties. And so she was surrounded by a lot of nursing friends. So that's what I saw. I saw a lot of nurses coming up and their love and passion for their patients, and it inspired me to, try it out, and I actually love it. And as far as forensic nurse examiner goes, I don't know, all of a sudden I just found out about that branch of nursing like maybe 3 years ago. And so I was able to take a free course to become trained as a nurse examiner. And I went ahead and said, you know what? I felt like, between finding out about it and then having the opportunity to take the free training, I was like, maybe this is a sign from the universe. Like, this is what I need to be doing. And then I was lucky enough a year after the training to be able to secure a position as a nurse examiner.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And definitely something that's really needed.
So I work as a licensed professional counselor in Maryland. I'm working out of my own private practice in Maryland. I've been licensed for about 7 or 8 years. I started off in community mental health, and then I moved on to private practice at maybe the middle of the start of the pandemic, so whatever that means. So in 2020. Um, I've worked with children and adults, and primarily my focus is on working with women. And so I decided to go into mental health because I knew that I liked helping people, but beyond that, I wanted to help people solve their own problems, get through conflicts, and just overall learn to enhance the quality of their lives. So that's essentially what got me in there. And I love it. I love it. I love it.
Wonderful. And that's just, it's super interesting that you took like your passion of wanting to help people and being able to apply it. Like, whereas I feel like some people are just like too nervous to take that step, but you were able to like take it and apply it. So yes, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Joel.
Well, to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what she just was saying about helping people, I definitely have always had an interest in helping people kind of figure things out. My educational background is in clinical psychology research and in women's studies. I double majored. And I was thinking I was going to get into therapy, and I had aspirations of becoming a sex therapist, like professionally helping people overcome sexual trauma and stuff, that kind of comes as a result of that. And life kind of pushed me in more of a direction to get into legal services. And so I got into investigation, which I had just as much of a passion for. And so I still today am doing basically investigations for attorneys and helping with criminal matters. And so every day I'm helping people with real issues. And aside from that, I've always had a passion in sexual education. In general, obviously wanting to tie some of the psychological um, factors of sex and what it means, in life. And we all know our basic, mom and dad come together, make a family, boom, you have sex when you're married. We all kind of know that blueprint, but the truth is that there's just so much more to it. And I have tried to focus on making it okay for people to explore what sex means to them, because it's a very complex thing. Um, as we know, especially, you know, everybody's not straight. Some people are bisexual, some people are homosexual, some people are asexual, meaning they don't really do sex at all. And so I've kind of just decided to go ahead and dive in and explore, what all is there. And you really find that it's so important. It's like one of the most important parts of being a human being. And so that's kind of where I've just kind of wanted to be. So that's what I do, trying to consult people and help people be more comfortable with talking about it, and exploring and learning.
Thank you for sharing. You all three come from very, unique backgrounds. And I think that being able to identify your why in relation to what you're doing, what you do in relation to your profession or your passions, I think that's very important to share. We may have some people tuning in who, may have similar likes or views or passions, and, they may just need assistance. So thank you all for being able to share. So in light of our topic tonight, which is women's health and wellness, I do want to just simply ask you all, like, what does women's health and wellness mean to you? Like, when you hear health and wellness, what are some things that you think about or what comes to mind?
Freedom.
And contentment, essentially, being content with where you are, regardless of the stage you are in your life.
Yeah, I would say also happiness as well, and some joy there too, and definitely peace, especially in the mind, peace of mind.
Absolutely. I think those are all very good identifications when it comes to health and wellness. I know for some people, health and wellness can be scary, it can be a journey or just trying to see what that looks like, for yourselves. But as Bonita, you just mentioned something important, just wherever you are, what that looks like, how that is, just being able to just look at what that is.
Yes, for sure. What would be some of the prevalent concerns that you're faced with in your line of work surrounded around women?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. What would be some of the most prevalent concerns that you're faced with in your line of work surrounded around women?
How?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyone?
I'm sorry, it froze. Did you need me to repeat it again?
No, I heard what you said. I was going to kind of deep dive in. I would say for a lot of women, I think it's having um, self-confidence um, in whatever it is that that woman wants for herself. A lot of people don't necessarily admit that it's an issue, but I think that it's probably the most prevalent for women in general. I mean, we kind of we do a lot of looking at other people to kind of see where we want to be, what we want to do. We see what, for me personally, I'm really good at being like, oh, everybody's doing that, I'm gonna go this way. That's kind of what I do, but a lot of people want to, kind of conform. So that's something I noticed.
For me, I'd probably say managing stressors. A lot of the women that I work with are dealing with all types of like anxieties and stress and relationship issues. And one thing that I pick up on really often that I think is common amongst most women is that we usually wear a lot of hats. Play a lot of roles in our families and the community.
Mhm.
And it can be very difficult to take those hats off, to figure out who we actually are, what do we actually like outside of being a sister or a daughter or a mother. And so a lot of self identity, stress management, those are the things that I think I see the most often.
Good one.
Um, I agree with Bonita as far as the women tend to wear multiple hats and in the being so concerned about taking care of others that we neglect ourselves and what we need. I also say with my forensic nurse side, a lot that I see is unhealthy relationships, unhealthy love relationships that leave the woman hurt and not always being able to get out of that relationship as well. Has been something that I've seen.
Thank you for sharing that. I
Yes.
think honestly, it just speaks volumes to just seeing how much we as women may have in common. We may have more in common than what we think. And sometimes, people may, feel that they're going through things alone. But just for you all to, in your different backgrounds, to, just show women, some of the things that you're observing in relation to trends and, what are like some of the most common struggles, that just being able to bring that to the table, I feel like speaks volumes. So we do have two comments in the comment section. We have some people answering along the questions with us. So we have two people who mentioned self-care. So
Mhm.
as you mentioned, Joel, just going back to that conversation centered around self-care, maybe not implementing enough self-care or not knowing how to have self care in our lives, especially going back to what Alana and Bonita talked about in relation to wearing multiple hats, being busy. So those conversations all have to do with health and wellness. So
Yes.
just going into the next question that we have for you all. I just want to talk a little bit about, maybe like programs or, wellness initiatives that you may know about or you've been a part of, heard of, or participated in. Do you all know of, or would you like to share about an experience that you've been able to either witness or actually participate in that has to do with health or wellness? Maybe it was an event, maybe it was community service, maybe it was an actual program or actual place of employment. Can you share a little bit about that?
For sure. So what I do with consulting with Bedroom Candy, I really push health and wellness. We have the company that I sell the products for. Bedroom Candy has an entire um, department dedicated to personal self-care products. So we have, and I won't go too deep into the products because I do want everyone to explore the website on their own, in your own time. But we have like a rejuvenation oil, and it's specifically used for post-sex self-care. So if you have sex and, you may have had to maybe stress your vagina out a little bit or something, that might not be the proper terminology, but we are stressing it out as soon as you know, stick something in there. So there's a rejuvenation oil that really helps to rejuvenate your natural lubrication and kind of keep your uh, vagina healthy post sexual activity. And so that's just one product, but that's not a product that you see being pushed, through Macy's every day. So it's just something that you'd have to go look for. You'd have to have a connection to someone that could provide these products because let's be honest, women's health and wellness is something we've had to fight for and push. And we've pushed it tremendously in the last 50 years. So perhaps one day rejuvenation oil will be something that we can go and buy at the grocery store. But right now it's not. But that's something that I feel is important to create awareness about so that people know there are products out here to help sustain, your health and wellness while you're just living life. And let's be honest, sexually, women these days, we aren't necessarily having one sexual partner like we may have traditionally post 50 years ago. Um, so it's just good to kind of have insight to that. But that's just one. I push a line of products, so I'm always talking about these things, but I won't overdo it. But yeah, that's just one thing that I work in.
Thank you for sharing that, Joel. For some it may be uncomfortable or scary to have those conversations, but it's really open and honest and it's needed, because especially when it relates to our sexual health, we may have questions or may have experiences or may not understand some things. So you bringing light to some of these things, especially like your products that you mentioned, are definitely needed. So keep having those conversations and keep
Yeah,
doing what you're doing.
I'm
We
here to
do have
push the
someone in the
boundaries.
comment. Yes, push those boundaries. We have someone in the comment who said, yes, bedroom candy. I love it. So, yes, keep going. Would either of you all like to share like anything about your favorite program or initiative that has to do with health and wellness that you know about or you've been a part of?
I grow. Like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I did this training for early childhood mental health, and it also centered on maternal mental health. And so essentially, you can't connect with children in early childhood without connecting with like their parents or the primary parental figure. So anyway, from that, I took this training that was called Fussy Baby, and it's about how like we go in the grocery store, you see a baby screaming, mom is probably overwhelmed, crying, or something like that. The idea around the training was to learn to give parents like some grace and to help them feel like they could give themselves some grace, and to give them some space to just be wrong, be right, and not think that they're going to completely corrupt their child. And so that was really transformative for me. And though I don't have children yet, it made a profound impact on me. And I know that it made a profound impact on the other women. Just sitting in this gracious state of being that's not always judgmental or critical of yourself. So that was like my favorite one.
I
That's
love
beautiful.
that. Like recently on social media, there's been a post floating around that's talking about mothers that they're not centered in anger. They may be frustrated, they may be tired, they've worked a shift, had to go home, cook, tend to the baby, still need to do schoolwork. Whereas their tiredness and frustration is coming off as anger, but it's just that they're being stretched so thin and they don't have grace given to them. So that's very important, and I hope that that program can grow and be pushed around so that others can learn the same, just like even outsiders looking, like you said, you're not a mom, but to just be able to relate and be able to be a sister to help and things of that sort, because it's challenging.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So something that I was directly involved with, I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. However, something that was brought to my awareness maybe about 2 years ago, a year or so ago, was maternal health and mortality rate. And I just didn't realize at that time how big of an issue maternal health really is and how much lacking there is across the country, especially for women of color. And so I know President Joe Biden has like an initiative, and a couple of the things that I saw in the initiative was one, continuing, they offer medical insurance for pregnant women. However, once you have the baby, it stops. But the initiative is to continue that for 12 months post partum, which I think is very important because a lot of things can come up after you've had your child. And then also in line with what Bonita had mentioned as far as maternal mental health, they have a part of the initiative that focuses on that as well, making sure that they're having providers in place to recognize signs of any type of maternal mental health issues like postpartum, postpartum blues, baby blues. So I think those are things that I don't think we talk about enough in our community. Like just reproductive health, period, really is something that I think we could, do more. Just so we all know that one, it actually isn't as easy as we may think to conceive a child. Like it really is not, and we should make it known so that way when women aren't struggling by themselves thinking that it's something wrong with them. It's actually more common that it takes multiple attempts to conceive, especially as you get older in age, and you may need help, and it's okay to get help from a medical professional.
Can I divulge that so I recently made the transition, speaking of mortality, for women of color, I made the transition from a doctor I'd had my whole life that was not of color. And then I went and got a Black OBGYN, and I love her. And since I've started going to see her, like I just feel so much more cared for as far as thinking about what will happen when I do decide to start thinking about having children, which I don't have any children either at this time. But I feel like my mortality risks have drastically decreased. She's even suggested, and this is a bit embarrassing, but it is what it is. She said that I should consider thinking about freezing my eggs because I'm nearing that age where things start to get a little risky. And I was a bit offended at first when she when she said it. I was like,
That's a very good suggestion, though, because a lot of doctors don't tell us that, and they'll let us think that we have all this time, and then we're trying to conceive later in life, and our eggs are not viable.
Yeah, I've never had to talk before.
So since we're talking about all of that, so I'm not a parent yet, but I'm pregnant now, and I'm pregnant through IVF.
Congratulations!
Congrats.
And so I was going to talk about that a little bit. I figured something was going on. I didn't know for sure for years. I talked to doctors. They were like, "Oh, it's just stress. It's just stress." It was not stress. Okay, it was not stress. So it's okay I learned to advocate for myself through all of that. But here we are now, and I'm 5.5, 6 months pregnant, and
That's beautiful.
That is exciting.
Very
much so. Oh, I love that. Yes, but no, it's nothing to be ashamed about, Jewel, at all. And it's good that you have someone that, one, looks like you, two, who can relate to you and be able to give you insight and direction that you need and make you feel comfortable about it. So now take the suggestions and, step by step.
Yeah, it's only $10,000. So I was like, well, I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad. If I can ensure an easy pregnancy or that it'll happen, that I have them, I think it's worth it. So
You finesse the insurance company. We'll talk offline.
Right, yeah.
I know that's right.
But we have some comments saying congratulations, Bonita. So we're showing love in the comments.
Yes.
Thank
That
you.
is so special and exciting. I guess just to segue into the next question, what are some practical or professional steps that you've taken to improve the lives of women around you or that you work with?
I'm talking. Since we were talking about medical health, that is something that I definitely talk about with the women that I work with.
Mhm.
Even in my personal life, I probably spend way too much time talking to my loved ones about their periods and how often they're occurring and symptoms. And so, reproductive health is obviously something that's really near and dear to my heart, and very close to what Jewel was saying about having this doctor that is now listening and likely reducing the mortality rate for birth. It's so important that we have these conversations. And I'm not scared. I'll talk to people about their poop. Okay, like let's get into it. Let's talk
Me
about all of
too.
that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I do that in personal and professional spaces, and I really encourage the women in my life, whether it be in a professional or personal space, to keep up with their annual doctor's visits and to ensure that they have a physician of color because that does make a difference.
It does.
Definitely, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good that you are having these conversations because even with our age group, we might not have had those conversations or had people talking to us as we were coming up. It's just, this is what it is. Your period is something that's going to happen. And then you just are learning and figuring things out. And it sometimes it makes us shut down and not want to talk. So the fact that you're opening up these conversations and encouraging your loved ones and those that you work with to talk about it, it's really important because a lot of people aren't knowledgeable and they don't know what's happening to them.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's important to remove the stigmas. Bonita, I think you mentioned earlier, like you have to remove the stigma from a lot of different things, especially
Mm-hmm.
with children. I feel personally very blessed that my mother was very on top of educating me about my body and, good touch, bad touch, your period. This is how it's gonna happen. I was walking around the house for fun wearing pads just to know what it felt like because I really wanted to have my period. Like, so I feel blessed that for me it was like ceremonial instead of it being devastating and like, oh my God, what's happening? And no one's talking to me about it because unfortunately that is the common experience that you hear spoken about.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to
Yes.
talk to kids. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is
So,
because it's better to hear it from an adult who actually knows what they're talking about than from friends who have their own maybe even misperception of what it
Mhm.
is.
Yes.
Yes.
yes. So let's segue into the next question. And this is, less about your profession and what you do, and it's more about yourselves. So if you feel open or comfortable with sharing, if you ever had an experience that ever, may have put a damper on your health or your wellness, if you want to share a little bit about that, and also just with that experience, what steps did you take after, to get through it or just even after,
Mhm.
if you feel comfortable sharing.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time for me?
Yeah, of course. So, have you personally, ever had an experience that may have put a damper on your health or your wellness? And, if you could just share a little bit of insight about that experience and what steps did you take to get through it or even after?
An experience that put a damper on your health or wellness,
Or
like
maybe there was, a fall in your health, a concern when it
Mm.
comes to your health, a concern that comes to your
well,
wellness, and what that
well,
was like, and what did you do
Mm.
to,
I
maybe
can
work through that?
definitely I can speak of a one. You guys might even like this. I don't know. Well, long story short, I used to be 230 pounds. I was diagnosed with a hiatal hernia. And my doctor said you can continue to live your life the way you're living it, or you can get your act together and hopefully lose weight and your body might heal and you can, not have to have surgery. And so I decided to change. It took time, but I decided to change, and I had to basically cut out all fast food, all soda, all caffeine. I had to start eating more than once a day, because in my very unhealthy state of living, I was eating once a day and saying, I've been working all day. It's an excuse. I literally had to transform how my mind works, and put myself first, which meant eating healthy and putting good things in my body, and taking time to exercise, taking time to meditate, and try to find more to who Jewel is. And it worked. So I hope that for everyone, but I would just hate for it to have to be kicked off by a health scare. But that's the only thing that worked for me, unfortunately. Before that, I didn't take being healthy seriously. I tried, and I would just make jokes and say things. And I learned that you have to be careful what you say, because words are powerful. Even the words you speak to yourself, especially as women. We do a lot of talking in our heads, but we don't talk enough to ourselves and say good things to ourselves. So I kind of activated that, and it's been quite a journey, but it's real. And don't ask me to see my pictures of me when I was overweight. Just go on my Facebook.
Congratulations, Jewel. That's important that you were and that you
Yes.
were able to make that change and get
Mhm.
yourself healthy.
Yes.
I'm currently, I guess, on that journey myself. I'm struggling with getting my weight down, because I have recently, I think it was, what year are we in now? 2022. So last year I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And though my pressure is under control now, it's under control with medication. And I want to get to a place where it's under control with my diet and my lifestyle. So I'm like working with my doctor. I also transitioned now to a different doctor. And I have a Black female doctor, actually, primary care provider. And so she also was on a weight loss journey. So she's been working with me. She's trying to get, she said, a nutrition class. She's trying to get her company to sponsor like her doing a monthly nutrition class, because she's very realistic. She's like, I know you're busy, and sending you to a nutritionist may not be something that you can do right now. So she's trying to see if she can have something that's a little more, I guess, convenient for her patients, and also have that group support from other people who are trying to get healthy. Because I don't want to say lose weight, trying to get healthy.
I think that's great. I think that's great. And you're on your way. And if you need any sort of help or advice or anything, we can definitely talk offline, because that's right up my alley. And I'm all for championing anyone that's making the change. It's hard to do, and you have to have constant encouragement. So I'm here for it.
That's beautiful. That's literally what this space is all about. Sharing and being able to make those connections. That is beautiful.
Bonita, did you?
Oh, I did.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I did have one other story though. As far as for the question, the negative experience. So I went to a doctor. I switched doctors like years ago, maybe 2016, 2017, and I had like this lump in my groin area, and when I would put pressure on it, would kind of hurt. And I told the doctor, he did his little assessment, push, and he's like, you're fine, it's fine. So I say, okay, I go on and live my life, but it's still there, causing a little pain. And I finally, last year, no, what are we in now? I'm sorry, my years are like sitting together right now. Last year, I finally brought it up to, because I switched providers, I brought it up to my then provider. And he, looked at it, he was like, I think this might be a hernia. And so he referred me, and sure enough, I ended up having surgery. And when the surgeon went in, I had 2 hernias. And he repaired both of them. And I said, well, look at this. This man, I did not speak up for myself. And so I do encourage women to not just take what the doctor says, challenge your provider, because they do not always know everything. Trust yourself and what you feel. And so, who knows if I would have let it keep going, if it would have ruptured or something, So just speak up and trust yourself. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, and make sure they check it out,
And
like
get a
fully
second opinion.
evaluate scans, all of that. And second opinions are important too.
Oh, yes,
Definitely. Yeah.
for sure. We have a comment. I just want to jump in here really quick. It looks like it says, as a type 1 diabetic, my doctors all my life didn't show much concern when my A1C was high. They would just continue to increase my insulin rather than educating me and helping me understand how certain lifestyle changes will help decrease that number. Until I changed to a black doctor, my A1C was high, and now it's the lowest it's ever been.
Oh,
Oh wow.
Yes, that's so good to hear.
Yes.
Congratulations on getting your A1C down.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Bonita, did you have anything to share?
Oh, yes, actually. So I'm going to kind of expound on what I was talking about earlier. So, um, I, in undergrad and I think grad school, I started noticing that my periods were really inconsistent and irregular, kind of out of nowhere. So I would go to, I don't even know how many doctors I went to. I went to like my on campus doctor. I went to a doctor in New Jersey where I grew up, where my parents were when I went home for the holidays. Came back here, and just everyone was like, "Oh, it's stress. You're in college. You're stressed out. You're stressed. You're stressed." And I was like, "I feel fine," but come to find out, I had PCOS, and this was,
Mm.
I think I started showing symptoms at probably 18. I wasn't properly diagnosed until I was 27. So that's
Mm.
9 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, 9 years of doctors not listening. And um, it really took years for me to even learn how to advocate for myself. I was so young, but
Mhm.
it took years for me to learn how to advocate for myself and to say, like, no, y'all need to listen. Something's got to change here. And the doctor that actually diagnosed me was a Black woman. And I remember sitting on her table and I was like, I've been having these issues with my period for years. And like, don't get me wrong, who doesn't not want cramps? Like I'm down for that. But I don't think this is normal. And so she looks at me and she says, well, you don't seem to have this symptom and you don't seem to have that symptom. And I was like, well, wait a minute, I do have that symptom. And she said, okay. And she ran the blood work, and lo and behold, I had a hormonal issue, metabolic hormonal issue. So I learned a lot from that situation. Also learned that I pretty much got diagnosed on a fluke, because had I sat there quietly, I would probably still be wondering what was
right.
going on. But she was really supportive after that. She was like my favorite doctor at the time. Um, and yeah, I just basically learned that it was important for me to feel empowered in the doctor's office, to not really feel intimidated by their expertise, because ultimately I'm the expert on my body. I live here, I know what's going on in here, and I'm the only one that can really speak for what's happening in my body. And so I've taken that with me everywhere I go.
Absolutely. That's good.
Yes, I'm so glad that you did that. It seems like everybody has either been setting goals or has been stepping up to make sure that they're advocating for themselves, whether it has to do with their health, mental, body, etc. Outside of like advocating, what would be some advice that you stick with that will help you to continue to make sure that you're in your best space, taking care of your own mental health, body health, things of that sort? But what would you, I guess, want to tell our audience to try to implement in their lives?
Try to be intentional.
Mm.
I have
Mhm.
personally been implementing intentional behavior, and this doesn't sound that great when I say it out loud, because you should always try to be intentional. But we live our lives. We don't necessarily think about the intent behind everything that we're doing, or everything that we even say or what we allow to occur. Um, and so I've learned that being intentional is just very helpful, and whatever that means, you know again, the first thing I said to the first question was freedom. To me, is the most important thing. You can have freedom, but you still have to be accountable for how you live your life, and that means that you need to try to be intentional. which for me is somewhat of a challenge sometimes because sometimes I'm a little too free. But being intentional and actually doing things that serve me, it seems to be working pretty well. So we'll just see how it goes. But that's the one thing I try to promote.
I would say for me, um, so if you find that you are someone who loves to pour into other people, to make sure that you're taking time for yourself, taking time to sit with yourself as well. Like I like meditation. I think meditation is something that is very helpful, and that can look different ways. Whether it's sitting, taking 15 minutes in your car by yourself and just sitting in silence and just reflecting and checking in with yourself, seeing, okay, what am I feeling right now in this silence? And then what do I need? Because it's very important to make sure that you know what's going on with you and how you're feeling.
That part.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I would say to kind of just take things a day at a time, not to try to move too far into the future, not to be stuck in the past, but try to figure out how to be in the present. Sometimes when we're going through tragedies or different crises, it can be really tough to even do that. So it might be hour by hour or moment by moment that you really just try to be want to try to be present. And I find that that helps us eliminate focus on the things that we can't control. They usually get us really flustered and make us get really frustrated. And so, focusing on the things that you can control in those moments helps you stay present and helps you be mindful of the goals that you have in mind.
You all shared some beautiful pieces of advice that I think are great takeaways, and they're right on topic in relation to the things that you all have been sharing this entire time. So thank you for sharing that. So, in relation to the advice that you shared, and just, you know, thinking about people who may be in spaces where they have goals or things that they want to work on, but they're experiencing maybe roadblocks or barriers, can you talk a little bit about like what barriers do you see, being in place to prevent women from reaching their goals when it comes to their health or wellness? And that can be in relation to, personal or the social climate or things going on today. Like, what are some of the most prominent barriers that you feel like are preventing women from reaching those goals and things that they have in mind in relation to the health or wellness?
I would say the isms and the phobias, and by isms I mean the racism, the sexism, the classism, the phobias being transphobia, homophobia. Um, so those things were really systemic, and that I think that speaks to like the broader concern in terms of there being barriers that can kind of keep women from meeting their goals. But then again, look at us, we're here, right? We have this amazing ability to still to be resilient in the face of all of those different challenges and barriers and to continue to achieve. And some of that likely comes from our ability to deal with sisterhood and to be a little more intuitive than men. Loki, Loki. But I think that ultimately those are like the largest barriers that we deal with.
Mhm.
We're talking about things that block our barriers that kind of prevent us from being great, I'm guessing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Black
think in
women or
addition,
in general, whichever you wanted to
yeah,
cover.
for women in general, I think in addition to all the isms, because there's isms across all, colors and creeds, I think again, pretty much insecurities. A lot of our insecurities are imaginary, um, to a point. I mean, right? Maybe like depending on the environment that you're in, maybe some of your insecurities have to be in place for your survival. That's not something that I judge, and that's not something that I critique. I understand it. I get it. But for those of us that don't really have environmental blocks, a lot of our insecurities are mental. They're in our minds, um, based on whatever it is we're consuming, which again, you change your environment, you change what you're looking at. I'm a really big advocate for changing who you follow on social media. If you're seeing the same things over and over again, sometimes you might need to change what you are consuming. Um, when I was beginning to lose weight, I remember I stopped following a lot of like artists, musical artists that I typically like. And I started following people that were working out and people that were only posting about working out and eating healthy. Before I knew it, I mean, the guilt was eating me. It was eating me alive. And so I was just like, okay, all these people are doing these things. I can do this too. And, along with the self affirmations and, just being intentional, realizing that you have to make the change. You have to work on the things that you can control, like you said. Um, uh, oh, God, I'm so bad with names. The health and wellness therapist that owns her own business. The name
Bonita.
starts with a B.
Bonita.
Bonita starts with a B. Okay, I was thinking Ebony, and it's the wrong. I'm horrible with names. I'm sorry,
It's okay.
Bonita. But like you were saying, it's important to kind of get to those insecurities, realize what's real and what isn't, and then just be brave enough to tackle them one moment at a time. I love that you said live in moments if you have to, because sometimes it really does come to living moment to moment. And you have to give yourself grace, and all that. You've been saying some great things. So
I agree with both Bonita and Jewel. I would only add also resources. I think that's a big thing. I'm not sure where everyone is located, but I know here in the DMV area, we're blessed to have a lot of resources. But in some more rural areas, the resources aren't there. But I will say one thing with COVID, the positive that has happened is the fact that a lot of providers are offering virtual health or virtual appointments, which can somewhat possibly help people who don't have access or who wouldn't have access to maybe Black therapists in their area. They may be able to reach out and find someone who is covered under their insurance, if they have insurance, that can offer their services virtually. But I think resources is a big thing. And the internet can offer a lot of resources too. Google can be your friend. Google's not always great, but Google can be your friend if you search it right and are able to find the right link.
yeah, I think we need to piggyback of what you said, because resources, that's a big, if you are living in an area where you don't have access to the resources or even a network of people that do, you're out of luck. And so I think that's a part of our systematic struggle right now. I'm in the Baltimore area, and working, in legal services and everything. Obviously, I'm consistently seeing regular citizens that just aren't aware of all the laws. Even they're not aware of what it is that they're doing that's against the law, and the only thing they know is that they're being taxed and fined, and money is not teaching anyone any lessons. So if you're a young single mother with multiple children and no support system, and might I add, no educational background, no real network, it's a hard road for you and your babies. That's a tough reality. And there's so much of it. So I think resources is probably one of the biggest barriers, honestly. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of move into our closing, I wanted to ask you ladies if you would share any resources, agency programs, things that you think are important for our viewers that you're associated with, or anything on your own platform.
Well, of course, Bedroom Candy. You all can visit my website. It's at www.bedroomcandy.com, and my consultant ID number is 11139. Um, Search around. There's a whole, yes, it's geared towards love, intimacy, and sexual education, but um, a very wise person told me once that the three components to a successful marriage are sex, money, and communication. So that's we'll start there, I think. But obviously there are many resources out there.
Yes, continue to drop those things, and we
Oh,
have them
it's
on.
sorry, it's
Oh, got
bedroom
them
candy
posted
with
right
an
here.
it's bedroom candy with an I. Yes, I just wanted to correct that. It's bedroom candy with an I, but then backslash 11139. That's all.
Okay, we'll see if they can correct it on the back end.
Of course, of course. I just
Thank
didn't want to
you.
confuse anyone because Candy Burris would be emailing me and trying to fire me if I don't get that right.
I fixed it. There you go. Yes.
Do not want that.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Let me think. Resources. So I know one thing I came across is womenshealth.org.gov. Womenshealth.gov. They offer some search engines for different like healthcare, mental health for women. Also, if you are in the DC area, the organization that I work with for forensic nurse examiners is DC Forensic Nurse Examiners, and the services we offer are if you have been sexually assaulted, we offer forensic exams where we would check to see if you have any injuries, document those injuries. We also do physical evidence kits, also known as like rape kits, where we do swabs for DNA to send down to the crime lab. These services are free. However,
Yes.
you also can receive them. You don't have to report to the police in order to receive them. We could still do the evidence collection. We would just hold them, we would hold your kit for a certain period of time, but we'll check in with you to see if you changed your mind. But it's always good that if you are assaulted to go ahead and get a kit done because it's a very traumatic experience and you may not feel like reporting in that moment, but if you get the kit done and you think later on, you may want to report. You can report and that evidence is still there and viable. We also do exams for domestic violence as well. If you're in a domestic violence situation, we can do an exam to document your injuries there. We're also we work with advocacy agencies that also help with legal things and like stay away orders, safe housing, things like that. So, and that's BC Forensic Nurse Examiners. And you can access us through MedStar Washington Hospital Center. Also, we do have a website where you can also schedule an appointment if you're in a domestic violence situation and you've been hurt. You can call us and schedule an appointment. I do not have that number off the top of my head right now, but I could get that to you if you wanted to put that in the little I don't even know what that's called. That's the little title at the bottom. Oh, and the other thing is to use your insurance. If you have insurance, don't be afraid to look on the website and look for providers through there because as women, we need to all have an OBGYN at least and a primary care provider that you're seeing annually.
Okay. And so I own and operate private practice. The name of it is Insight Behavioral Services. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Maryland, and so I'm only licensed to provide therapy in Maryland. But I do provide coaching services anywhere outside of the state of Maryland. I primarily work with women around anxiety, relationship issues, stress management, amongst some other things. But I do have a pretty diverse clientele. I also provide supervision to new clinicians. So And my website is www.insightbehavior.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Insight Behavior.
Yes, thank you all for dropping, these amazing nuggets and resources and tips. We talked about a lot of beautiful things and, just needed topics this evening. And I think you all were able to just share a lot of insight, especially from you all's backgrounds, to our viewers, to each other. And
To
so we
us.
appreciate you. Yes, to us as well. Us as well. And I'm looking through the chat. So those who are tuning in, just make sure that you're just looking through the chat. All the resources that have been shared are listed. So they're always here and available. So just make sure that you're taking advantage of all the knowledge that has been shared. Oh, if that is not all, well, we just want to appreciate you all again for taking the time to be a part of this amazing women's health and wellness panel with the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. We do, not take it lightly that you all took the time out of your day to join us and share your expertise.
Yes,
Alrighty,
so
if
much.
that is not all,
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, ladies, for even
absolutely,
putting this together. This is important.
Yes.
absolutely.
Learned a
Thank
lot.
you all.